Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons, and this is the Earthworks Podcast. I'm excited to have Eric Harshman with me from Transylvania University, and Eric is the grounds superintendent. And I think I said this to you the other day, Eric. I just love saying Transylvania. You know, one of the things that, and I don't know if you know this, but Wikipedia gives you all sorts of things. As I was going through and studying Transylvania, one of the things I found was that you guys had to sue Hallmark for. You do know this. I found that fascinating.
I do.
I guess they just wanted to. They built a Transylvania University Halloween shirt, and then claimed that they didn't even know who you guys were, and you've been around since 1780. It was kind of an interesting little story. I don't know if that becomes. Do people come to visit you just because of the Halloween thing?
We actually have a big event on Halloween, where we have on Old Morrison. That's the oldest building that we have on campus. It was originally Old Morrison. It was actually pretty cool. Back during the Civil War, it was actually used during a hospital. It was used for a hospital during the Civil War. So on the steps of Old Morrison, we have these big. It's a big stately building with a lot of limestone steps. We actually have. During Halloween, the campus community and students, faculty, and staff come out and they carve pumpkins. I mean, there are hundreds
Really?
of pumpkins that are illuminated, and it's up for about a week and a half up on the steps of Old Morrison. But yeah, that's a tradition. I think that started back. I don't even want to put a date on it because I'm going to be wrong if I put a date on it. But yeah, so it's been going on
A lot of years.
Yeah, it's been going on for quite some time, but yes, so the steps of Old Morrison, you can come during Halloween, and it's illuminated with all different things. All the athletic teams come and they carve pumpkins, and the campus community comes out. We open up. It's a pretty big deal, but yeah, you can find it if you look it up. You look up Transylvania University online, and you look up Halloween and pumpkins. It's Pumpkin Mania is what it's called, and you can find it. There's tons of pictures out there with yeah.
You know, one of the things I was doing when I was going through the Wikipedia was trying to figure out where the name came from, and I never knew this. It just means across the woods, and apparently the original campus was in Virginia back in the 1700s.
Yes.
And it was just a very, very, very wooded property, and hence the name Transylvania. I mean, we all, you think of Transylvania as Dracula, and obviously the story of it all, but that's really not where it all came from. The other thing that I found fascinating, and you guys are a great hidden gem, a great secret really in the university world, but there's been dozens and dozens of senators and a couple of vice presidents, a bunch of people from, a bunch of folks from the Supreme Court, U.S. representatives. I mean, you've got quite the history in this country at that university. I mean, it's really rich.
Yeah, there is. If you look back on notable figures that's graced the halls here on campus, yeah, you'll find a lot of definitely vice presidents dating back into the 1800s.
Yeah.
But it's a rich culture for sure.
So talk about the university. I mean, let's kind of get into where you are now, and then I want to get back into how you got into this crazy business. But what's the university like? And you apparently don't have football anymore?
We do not.
And I assume you're managing the grounds and sports fields.
Yes. So really, I was brought in initially just to manage the campus grounds, which is 200 plus acres. You don't think that when you're looking at the footprint. You're looking at the campus itself, because we are located downtown Lexington, Kentucky. We're literally 2.5 miles, maybe even it's actually less than that, from the University of Kentucky. So we are super close to a large university, but with where we're located, we manage a little over 200 acres. Brought in initially just to manage just the campus itself, but I've incorporated myself with the athletic department based on my previous work history and my background. So I oversee the athletic complexes. I manage the day-to-day operations on our softball complex. But yeah, I kind of act as a liaison, kind of an advisor role to the athletic department on that side of things.
Do they bring in the outside folks to manage the properties, the sports fields?
I
Or
do. I do use an outside source
Okay.
to help with mowing of our athletic complexes. They're not relatively close to campus. Like our old baseball complex is several miles away, so it's easier for me just to outsource that. I just monitor and manage that contract.
Yeah.
And then our athletic complex, where we have an artificial field that hosts men's and women's soccer, men's and women's lacrosse. We have field hockey. We have track and cross country teams. All those, that facility is down the street, just about half mile down the way. And again, it's just easy for me just to contract that and just manage that. But I do check on that location quite frequently. I check on all the locations quite frequently, and make sure everything is being upheld to the agreement that we have. But then when it comes to softball, then I manage the day-to-day operations there, where it's the mowing, the infield clay surface, all the fertilization applications, all those things.
Why just softball? Why are you managing just that one complex?
Well,
Location?
Logistically, softball makes the most sense. I open up the doors to my shop and I'm staring at softball.
Okay.
So
Right
logistically,
yeah.
it makes sense. Like it's a stone's throw away from my shop. So I open up the roll up doors to our shop, and that's what I'm staring at is softball. So out of all of the different athletic complexes that we have, logistically, that one just makes the most sense.
Right. So all your soccer is artificial?
Yes.
Wow. How's that go across with the soccer folks?
It is what it is. Yeah. I wish it was natural grass. But we actually just renovated, did a full-fledged renovation of that field. So this is the first year it's been back in place with the artificial turf. But it holds up well. The coaches are really good about maintaining it, and grooming it and keeping it so it doesn't get overly compacted. And then when you have soccer out there, but then you also have two lacrosse teams and a field hockey team, there are definitely some areas that take the abuse more than others, and that's why the biggest reason I'm a huge proponent of making sure the coaching staff is out there helping the longevity of the field and maintaining those wear areas. Lacrosse and field hockey in that goal crease there, they beat it up pretty good, even on an artificial field. So making sure that it's not getting overly compacted and that they're staying on top of it, or the field stays loose is huge.
So what are the coaches doing? They have equipment there to brush
We
it
have
out?
equipment. We have equipment out that way. We have a greens groomer that we take out there, and they go out there and they loosen it up, and they're grooming it. On schedule, they should be about 3 times a week, but I think it gets done at least twice a week. Yeah.
Right. Well, exactly.
Yeah.
That's not bad. So tell them 4 times. Yeah. Maybe they'll get to 3.
I would love for them to be out there doing it daily, but that isn't going to happen.
But you're not involved in that at all. So this is just so you're actually.
No, I oversee. I go out there because it's pretty evident to tell if I go out there, and I can look at the field and I can tell if they've been doing their part grooming it and maintaining it. Because if I go out there and it's just noticeable. It's noticeable. So then if not, then I reach out to them directly, or I just talk with another athletic director and say, here's the issue. We just put a big investment with redoing this field. If we want to maintain this for longevity purposes, they need to do their part and they need to maintain.
And it seems to be working for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's to their advantage. I can imagine that they would see the benefit of having somebody who's actually doing it. It's not the coaches doing it, or they pass it off to a student, or
coaches actually do it.
Coaches are actually doing it. Wow.
Coaches are actually out there and they're grooming the field and
So
maintaining.
what's the secret of working with the coach staff and actually getting them to do some of the heavy lifting? And there's got to be, you must have a secret there.
I wish I had the secret sauce to tell everybody on that one, but it's just it was already kind of ingrained in their minds prior to me getting here. That they were. Yeah, so I really haven't had to put a lot of force and effort into making sure that they're staying on top, because they've actually done a really good job.
Oh, that's nice to hear. That's good. I mean, that's not easy. A lot of times there's a lot of head banging between coaching staffs. You guys don't have football. So you had football at one point years and years ago, but is there any talk of bringing football back to Transylvania?
I haven't heard anything. I hope I'm happy the way that it is.
Yeah, I was
That
gonna say you
I don't
probably don't
need
want
I don't need one more thing that I've got to
to.
oversee, especially with something like that. So no,
Yeah.
football is not in the conversation, at least not as of right now. Whatever time it is right now.
How far are you from the University of Kentucky?
They're literally, I want to say it's maybe not even a mile.
Oh, so you're literally next door
Yeah.
neighbors. Yeah.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Does that
I mean, we were
overshadow
looking.
anything going on? I mean,
Mm,
obviously they're much
no,
bigger, I assume.
no. I mean, there are times when there's a lot of activity, leading up to their graduation,
Yeah.
and move in and move out. There's always a lot of extra traffic flow leading towards that way. A lot of our local high schools utilize Rupp Arena for graduation. So we get a lot of extra traffic flow leading up to this time of year when high
Mhm.
schools are starting to graduate and everything. So we'll see a little bit more increase in traffic. But no, it really doesn't. There's not an issue. I've not had any issues with being so close to the university. It actually works in my favor because I can call upon my counterpart in the sports side of things over at UK if I need to borrow equipment or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy for me to make that drive down there to borrow a couple things here and there and then get it back to them. So that's been nice.
It's one of the best parts of our industry is being able to
Absolutely. Yeah,
work with
everybody's willing to help out
yeah,
for
I mean
sure.
there's no competition really if
No,
you guys aren't competing with each other in
I'm
any
not
way.
hiding any
Yeah.
secrets. They're not hiding any secrets. We're just here to help each other out.
So what's the core of your day to day? I mean, what's the actual business of the ground superintendent at a university of your size?
Yeah, so honestly, my crew size is relatively small.
Yeah.
I wish we had more. It's actually myself and three others. So it is a
Oh wow,
whopping
that's
crew of,
pretty small
yeah,
for a couple
four.
hundred
Yeah.
acres.
Yeah, so we've got a crew of four. And the way that I've kind of devised everything is I've just kind of sectioned campus off into different zones for the general maintenance, whether it's the landscape side of things, mowing, edging, all the day-to-day operational things. I'm not any different than that. I have a section of campus that I manage and maintain on the daily as well. The only added thing that I have is I have all the administrative things. I've got to be the manager. I've got to do all the other things and sit in all the meetings and things like that and deal with the budget and approve time and
Yeah.
I'll do all the fun administrative things. But that's a lot of my day to day is really just coming in, checking in with the staff, first thing in the morning. This time of year, I mean, we're pretty streamlined. Right now, it's just gearing up for commencement, which is May 27th. So few weeks away from graduation. So a lot of things that we're doing now, and a lot of things that we've been doing in the months leading to this is everything is just based on graduation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just checking in with the staff first thing in the morning, kind of just getting a status check on where things were the day before, things that they may need additional support with, dividing and conquering. If one person needs a little extra help, then we're flexible. We're all flexible with each other's schedule, and we just kind of move and help out to knock these areas out. And then from there, I'm putting eyes on campus, looking at different things, double checking my schedule, making sure I'm not double booked, to go in and out of meetings and meet with people. And I'm out there grinding with the rest of the staff,
So you're
helping
working
out.
superintendent.
Yeah, yeah.
All because of necessity at this point. Would you
All because of
yeah, I
necessity.
mean if
Yeah.
you had 5, 6, 10 other people, would that change things or
Yeah, if I had for sure, absolutely. Anytime you have more help, I think
well, yeah,
it's
beyond
going
the
to be
obvious.
helpful. Or it could be a hindrance depending on if
Right,
the
exactly.
team chemistry. But no, I think if I just had one more person or even just one more full-time person and some temporary help, it would definitely free me up to do more of the administrative stuff, and planning accordingly. I mean, like I said, I do all the things that I, the guys do. I just have all the administrative duties to kind of go along with
Yeah.
that. But having that additional labor force would definitely help out, just on projects and stuff like that that we have come up. If I could have a set crew that were just doing the general maintenance, and then I could have a handful of guys working on a particular project
Yeah.
instead of dividing and conquering and trying to get things all done in a short amount of time.
How would you describe the property horticulturally? I mean, are you really trying to keep aesthetics high? I mean, what's the goal, focus, or vision of the horticultural position of what you guys are in charge of?
Yeah. Coming in, I've only been here at Transylvania University for a year and a half. We haven't touched on that quite yet, but in the year and a half that I've been here, a lot of the things, horticulturally, um, they were pretty solid. They've done a lot of aerification in the past, and things looked on the surface, everything looks great aesthetically. But there were some tweaks. There were some things that I wanted to add into our day to day, yearly horticultural program. So I did ramp up our aerification a little bit more on high profile areas. Working through that. And that's really the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And doing that and just changing the way that we handle leaf removal and that kind of stuff. Leaf removal and leaf mulch is a good thing for the soil, but at the same time, overabundance of leaves being mulched up time after time after
Yeah.
time can be a detriment, can shoot you in the foot,
A
especially
lot
when
of
you're dealing with
potassium
oaks.
salts in those things.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with oaks. Oaks are, naturally pretty acidic, the
Yeah.
leaves on them. So you sit there and you're going to start messing with the pH if you keep adding more and more of
Yeah.
this leaf mulch and this leaf matter into the soil. So revamping the way that we've done our leaf removal practices, that's been one key component. Working through all the campus trees. We have a lot of stately trees on campus, working through that and opening up, thinning out the canopy, getting more natural sunlight down to the turf. Not only for the turf side of things, but then on the landscape side of things as well. So a lot of things really have been not so much geared on what the grass is looking like, but really it's just a lot of years of just neglect to our trees and just kind of working through that
Yeah.
process.
Do you happen to have a tree survey on the property? Do you know what the population is? Have you ever considered that or do that?
I don't have one. I have considered it. I just haven't had the time to make all that
Yeah.
happen.
Had a chance to interview a friend here in the Lehigh Valley at Moravian College, and they got a student group that ran out and helped them do the survey. So they kind of have tracked all of and it's again an older university, so there's a lot of old stately trees, and it was kind of interesting to see what they did with all this data. But they had all this data, and in your case, you've been there for so long, you've got to have some pretty big old stately trees on that property, I'm guessing.
We do. I do have a couple in front of the Morrison building. I have two large white oaks that have been around for a very, very long time. I actually came across a picture yesterday that was from 1960, and I saw those two oaks. They were still sizable then. They were still good size back in
Wow.
1960. So compared to what they are today in 2023, so I know those true trees have been around for a very long time. I've actually got a nice white ash tree it's deemed the kissing tree on campus. It's been around for a very, very long time. I have some information on that tree. I had it cored and I had it sampled. It's well over 200 years old. Just that
Really?
tree alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
And
it's
they've
a
been kissing
large.
under it for 200 years. Is that the
Yeah,
history?
yeah. So that's one that I make sure that I stay on top of the emerald ash borer and make sure that I'm making
Right.
sure that it's getting all the treatments that it needs. And I actually did that. We did that last year, so I won't have to circle back to do that one again until next
Oh,
year.
that's
But
good.
that's one tree for sure that when we have strong storms that roll through the area, that tree alone can keep me up at night wondering if
If
branches are
it's
going
going
to
to
come
make
out
it.
of it or if it's going to make it
Yeah.
or things like that. It's in great shape. It really truly is. I had some work done to it last year. The two stately oaks in front of Morrison, the kissing tree, and a handful of other trees. I had one of my arborists, my consulting arborist. He came in and gave me an estimate and was looking at the overall health of it. We did some thinning just some dead wooding and things like that, just preventatively. But those were key things that I wanted to focus on when I first got here to make sure that those things were going to be here, not today, but many years down the road.
Any compromising pictures of a future senator or representative under the kissing tree by any chance?
Let me look into that. If I find anything,
thanks.
I'll send them your way.
So you're using an arborist company. So most of the important trees you're actually bringing folks in, and how often are they in, and what typically would a consulting arborist do for you?
Yeah, so I like I said, well, that was one of my biggest concerns when I first got here was just the overall neglect of some of the trees on campus. So I have a consulting arborist that I've worked with now for probably 7-8 years now. And I trust his opinion. I trust his expertise. So I have him come in and we'll walk campus, probably quarterly. I actually just called him yesterday to come in to take a look. Take a look at some trees. Now things have kind of flushed out. We're in full spring. Everything is going. So I'll have him come back in. We're working through some scheduling, and I'll have him come in and take a look at all that, and we'll just kind of walk campus casually. Nothing too business related, but we'll just walk, and I'll show him some concerns I may have. He'll point out some things to me, and we kind of set up a game plan. And then I'm kind of just we looked at the trees that we've done in the previous year, and I'll just kind of cycle through those. I'll try to pick out certain areas of campus, and we'll just cycle through those on a rotation.
What would be a program that you and he may put together for supporting some of these trees? Are you doing injections? What typically happens, and who does it?
Well, so on some we've talked about doing some root pruning on some of our trees, on some of our oak trees. We've talked about, obviously, with our ash trees, to make sure that we're staying on top of the emerald ash borer, and looking at those. And then a lot of it really just comes down to just the canopy of these trees, and doing some preventative pruning, just scaling things back, making sure I don't have large obstructing branches that are gonna mess with our buildings here on campus as well. So looking through those things. So a lot of it really is just doing some visual. I'm looking for the signs. I'm looking for maybe fungus or something like that's growing from the base of the tree. We're looking at those things, and basically just walking it, and just kind of just doing a preliminary what if situation, and looking at that. But definitely staying on top of the ash trees and our preventative pruning, and looking at those things. Those are the biggest things that I'm working on.
Talk to me about the landscape on the property. How elaborate is it? What's the focus from your standpoint, program focus? How important is it to the overall, aesthetics of the campus?
Sure. Yeah. So, I was brought into this position to raise the bar on the campus appearance, from everything, from whether it's the grass that people are, hanging out in, to the trees, to the landscape. My general number one thought was a lot of the landscape is pretty old, outdated. We've got a lot of old boxwoods,
Get rid of all those. They're horrible.
A lot of boxwoods, taxus, a lot of big viburnums, things of that nature. And I'm still to this day dealing with those. So a lot of it, I think it's dated, most things, landscape is great, but landscape has a certain time frame as well. And it comes a time when you've got to start doing some renovation and making some changes. So a lot of what I see now is the removal of boxwoods, bringing in some new varieties of shrubs and plants, some natives. Not a lot of natives on our campus. I would like to incorporate some native plant material back into our landscape. And just going through that process, and really just prioritizing building by building, pulling those out. I've definitely eliminated some of our landscape in the time that I've been here. I've shrank some of our landscape, and for a couple of different reasons. One, it was just on the cost point. We have all this additional landscape where you got to mulch, and then it's additional time that you got to spend for putting in product to keep your weeds out, and then just the manpower. One for the mulch, one for the two for the weeding, doing all those normal things. So a routine maintenance kind of thing on that aspect. So I've shrank a lot of the landscape, and actually just leveled areas out, graded it, and sodded it.
Also, just putting some of it into turf.
Yeah, just putting it
Turf
right
would
back
be a
in.
lot easier to maintain with a small
It
crew
is for the
than
most
a
part. I
landscape.
mean,
Yeah.
I've got some buildings on campus where the landscaping is 360 degrees around these buildings, and it's
Yeah.
unnecessary. So it's just really shrinking that footprint of the landscape, adding in turf. It's easier to maintain on our end. Adds a little extra that we've got to, we got to treat with fertilizers and things of that, but at the end of the day, it cuts back on mulching and the weeding
Yeah.
and just extra manpower. So doing those, and I've got ideas. I've got thoughts and ideas on what I want to change out here on campus. It's just really
Get
comes
5
down
more
to
guys that you can put on your crew. So
that's exactly it. It comes down to labor. It comes down to budgetary restraints, and just picking my priorities and knowing what hill I want to die on that day.
Right, exactly. What's I don't know how to ask this question. What's the flower situation? Are you a very floral campus? Do you have a lot of annuals? Do you put a lot of stuff out?
No, and I'm pretty simplistic when it comes to that kind of stuff. So not a lot of annuals. Do we have some? Yes, we do. But it's
a lot of work for a small crew.
Yeah, that's really the driving factor on that is my crew size is so small, and annuals take a lot of work. They take a lot of work. So no, we do have some. I have probably a dozen or so hanging baskets on some priority areas. I've got a couple annual beds on some prominent places on campus, but they're nothing really, really big.
Right.
So try to keep it as low key as I possibly can, just because of the labor and everything that's involved with that. Yeah.
Quality over quantity in that case.
Yeah,
with a small budget.
for sure. Yeah. No, I've been and I've worked at places, and I oversaw places that we had a lot of annuals and a lot of flowers. So I know the amount of work that goes into that.
A lot of work.
And just based off of the labor that I have myself plus 3, I just got to pick my battles and does the campus, would they like to see more flowers out there? Absolutely, they would. But I don't have the campus community banging down my door saying they're going to volunteer and help me take care of them either. So
exactly, or somebody coming to you and say, "Hey, here's a lot more money you can have for 6 more employees and and a whole bunch of new stuff." One of our mutual friend Kevin Mercer taught me this many times. Kevin's, for those who don't know, is at Denison University. He's actually been here on the podcast, but he really instilled upon me at this, for the universities, how important what you guys do from a recruiting standpoint. So when you're putting out a product that is, the landscape is colorful and attractive, and the grass is well maintained. It really is a strong recruiting thing. And I remember a few years back when my son was starting to visit schools. Of course, I'm extremely biased being a horticulturist, but you'd walk around some of these campuses and the turf was just, it was a dirt track. And then you'd go to another campus and it was, the lawns were well maintained, the landscapes were beautiful. Kevin in particular does a great job. He has these massive hanging baskets that are all over campus. He also has a much larger crew than you have, but just the ability to attract and recruit, and of course at the university setting these days, and every university is that way, recruiting is a big piece. Does that come up in conversation at all with the powers to be when you came on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about first impressions.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly,
so you got people. I don't care if they're coming here and they're going to play on one of our athletic teams, or you've got prospective students that are just going to come here to get a really good education. It's all about that first impressions. If you come through and there's trash scattered all over the campus, or the lawns aren't being maintained and they're weedy and they're ratty, and the landscape is just, it looks unkempt. That's the student is going to see that, but also too the parents are going to see that, because
that's the money. The money maker.
That's where the money's coming from. They're going to be helping pay that tuition. So if mom and dad are here on campus and they see things aren't up to snuff, and it's a direct reflection on me. It's a direct reflection on my staff. And then at the end of the day, obviously, it's a direct reflection on Transylvania University. Yeah. And it shows that, to me, if you come into a situation like that and it just looks like they don't care, then that's the impression that the people are going to get when
Exactly.
they're coming on campus.
Yeah, and like I said, when we traveled around, we must have seen a normal, dozen
Sure.
schools. And I remember vividly walking around and hearing, we were in group tours with other parents and their children that were, considering the university. And I remember vividly hearing a number of parents, mothers in particular, and I don't mean that to sound sexist by any means, but they were concerned about, man, it's just not very appealing. I mean, the grass was all dug up, and the bushes were all kind of beat up, and there was no color, there was no thing. Like I said, Kevin really instilled that in me, and I've interviewed a number of folks here on the podcast from universities, and it really has taken a big change in the last 10 years for what you guys are really focused on, and it's important. Like you said, it's first impression. So you really have an ability to focus pretty well on turf. So you've got a lot of turf focus on. What's the secret of maintaining turf on a campus where you've got, how many students do you have? I didn't even ask you that.
It's about 1,100. It's a little over 1,100
So you got
students.
1,100 students walking around your lawns all day long, hanging out, and doing whatever you do on a college campus. What's the secret of keeping and maintaining the turf on an environment like that? And you're not in an easy place. I mean, you're in a transition zone.
Yeah, we're in a transition zone. Like I said, and I'm in an urban setting, so there's a lot of concrete. There's a lot of concrete. There's a lot of asphalt. Everything that's around us. So for me, it's really it's sticking to our mowing schedule. I mean, I do not deviate from that. I mean, I'm making sure that we're getting all of campus mowed weekly. And that's not saying just the main parts of campus. I'm trying to get everything, even some of our outlying areas and things like that even are all kind of off the beaten path. I want to make sure that stuff is being maintained. And really, it's just a really good cultural practices that's been instilled prior to me getting here, and then staying with that. So the aerification that we do, and the fertilization, and making sure that we're trying to keep things as weed free as we possibly can. Staying on top of those things, keeping a schedule on those things, and really trying to stick to that schedule as close as you can to hit those windows of opportunity that are going to benefit you later on down the road. That's the biggest thing for me, is making sure that we have that consistency, day in and day out, year in and year out. Just making sure that we're consistent with all the practices that we're doing. If we've got to go back, and we've got to cut things again, maybe twice that week, then that's what we're going to do. I mean, I've got certain areas on campus that do grow faster than others. And it does become problematic sometimes when you get out there and you go to mow it at the same mowing height and everything else that you did the week before, but it's almost like you're almost baling hay out there. So going out there and keeping the aesthetic look up, and cleaning up after yourself, and staying on top of those things, that's been beneficial for me.
Yeah. What's your secret for keeping grass under the trees?
So what we've done, that was one thing that I incorporated just recently. We just wrapped it up earlier this week, but none of our trees that were mulched, right? So there was no mulch, and I've used so all of them, they were not mulched. And when you not have trees that are mulched and things like that, you're gonna have mechanical issues, and you're gonna have issues to the trees and things like that. So talking with my consulting arborist, he was more than willing to bring me any and all truckloads of wood chips. So I've been able to offset that cost as well. But putting wood chips in and around the trees on all of our campus trees, and then a lot of it too, I mean, just going through, I mean, you can start to see if you get grass that starts coming up in there, and just be selective and selectively spraying those out. I don't want to say that we don't get grass clippings in our tree rings, because we do.
Of course.
But the guys, my team, they try really, really hard not to get those in there. But it comes a time when it's inevitable and it does happen. And they do their best to keep it clean. With, if they got to take, when they go out on a mower, they're always carrying a backpack blower, a handheld blower with them on their mower. So they're doing their best to try to keep the grass clippings and everything out of there. I have thought about looking at, when you have on your zero turn mowers, you have I can't even remember what they're actually called, but it's a component on the mower that drops down and it closes off your discharge on the side of the mower.
It's a shield, discard shield.
The shield, the shield. But they have different ones now that are on the market, and I've thought about maybe getting some of those and
just to keep the mulch clean.
Yeah, to keep the mulch clean and things like that. So that would be an investment to add on to our mowers. So that's one component.
So before you got there, the trees weren't wrung out with mulch. I mean, you didn't really have that definition.
No.
Wow, so that must be a big change since you've been there.
That was a huge change. Yeah, that's a huge change. And it's taken quite some time to get, again, just 4 of us trying to get all that taken care of and working in the schedule. Yeah, we just finished it up on the last grouping of trees just earlier this week.
Just in time for graduation, right?
Just in time for graduation.
Mom and dad come back.
Yeah.
And that's when you start recruiting them for donations for.
That's exactly it.
For the rest of it all. So it's all good.
Yeah.
You and I met at a soils class that I was giving in Kentucky. Do you consider yourself much of a soils guy? I mean, we've never really gotten that far down that conversation, you and I.
Not really. No, I'll be 100% honest with that. No.
Now let's start working with a little soil test. Have you run soil tests, or were there soil tests there before you got there?
I didn't have access to any soil tests that were prior to me being here. I did start doing some soil sampling and things like that starting last year. Started doing that, and then I did a few more on a couple select areas this year as well. So we are doing some soil samples, some soil tests and things like that. But no, there was no record of any of that prior that predated me.
So what's typical fertility on the turf? What's your typical programs?
So we're typically, I actually contract all of my fertility out.
When you got 4 guys, I can imagine you'd have to, right?
So, I mean, it's one of those things that I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew.
Yeah.
But we're running a quarterly program, one in the early spring, one that's going to cover, some fertilization and obviously some pre-emergent herbicides. Yeah. And then I'm actually due to have my contractor come back out next week, actually, or the week after. It'll probably be 2 weeks before graduation, so it should be late next week. They'll be back on campus and making another round, maybe a little bit more post-emergent, adding a little post-emerge into their app, and it'll be all granular product that they use. And then there are some select areas that if I see some things that are coming up, then I'll mix up some chemicals on my own, and I'll come out and I'll do a foliar application on those areas if it's more widespread. But that's typically I try to keep it as simple as possible. I don't try to reinvent the wheel with that kind of stuff. I like to keep it as simple as possible. One, just for my own personal well-being, my own personal thought process, and just I just didn't want to add in too many other things with my small crew size.
Yeah, that's got to be a limiting factor. What's the biggest challenge? I mean, I assume your summer seasons are pretty nasty in your part of the country. I mean,
we get pretty warm. We get pretty warm once we get to the summer. A lot of it is just business as usual. We got to make sure that we're staying on top of obviously the mowing and everything. But if it gets to a certain point and it gets too hot, then it's a detriment. You don't want to go out there and do all that excessive mowing week in and week out. So at that point, we're checking on our landscape, making sure that we're not having any things kind of, dwindling or heat stress and things like that. So we do a lot of hand watering, things like that. I don't have a lot of irrigation. I have some areas on campus that are irrigated, but not all. So then,
so a lot of the turf is not irrigated.
All of the turf is not irrigated.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So you have no irrigation on turf at all?
No irrigation on the campus turf itself. I do have some select locations where the landscape is irrigated,
keep some water on
and I
that,
monitor that.
yeah.
I monitor that on an as needed basis. But
Yeah.
so turf wise, there is no irrigation. So when I'm dealing with, times of heat and things like that, and I start seeing
Right.
hot spots and things like that, we do our absolute best to stay on top of those. But again, it's hard to manage widespread events like that. Softball has irrigation, so I don't typically have to worry about that. I can just monitor that. If I run into situations where I've got some hot spots, then I can hook up a hose and I can go out there and do some hand watering. But a lot of it really just comes down to making sure that we're staying on top of our plant materials, things like that, and that we don't
What's
let
your
we don't
native
see a lot.
soil like? How would you describe your native soil?
It's pretty good. I would say it's like a sandy loam, really,
Oh, good.
for the most part. Yeah.
Where's the sandy coming from?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm not that's a
Are
really
you
good
you're not
question.
close to the river, are you?
No,
I didn't
absolutely
think so.
not.
Yeah.
No. So it's more of a sandy loam. We
So
get a
you're
lot
well
of
drained, so you're getting some decent drainage.
yeah, we get some good well drained areas. Now I do have problematic areas, like I said before. I mean, I've got 1,100 students that are walking certain
Right,
areas of campus. So
exactly.
I've got an
Constantly.
area by all of our res halls, our residential quad area, that just it gets trampled.
Yeah.
It gets trampled, and it's kind of a secondary athletic field. I mean, we got intramural football that's going on out there.
Yeah.
I believe right now we've got a ultimate frisbee league that's going on
Oh,
out
there you
there.
go. That's important.
So we've got those things. So it gets trampled, and that area is pretty rock hard. So there isn't an amount of aerification in there that I could really help alleviate that area. But a lot of it's just making sure that I'm out and about and I see parts of campus, and then I can pinpoint areas that are a little bit more of concerning to myself. So we can just stay on top, try to be as proactive as I possibly can.
Right. Well, let's get together this year and do some soil testing. I'll help you with
Absolutely,
that
let's
and
do
give
it.
you some stuff. Tell me about, and let's go backwards now. Give me some background information on you. How'd you get into this goofy business, and where have you been before?
Yeah.
And
So
why?
I definitely never saw myself in this line of work
I
ever.
remember you telling me that.
If I think back to my time when I was a kid, my parents couldn't get me to go outside to mow, to do anything. It was knockdown, drag out fights. I recall. My parents.
I think there's a lot of us in the industry, very much same story.
I did not want to have to go mow. I grew up in northeastern Indiana, is where I'm originally from.
Yeah.
I'm from a town as Bluffton, Indiana.
Okay.
It's just south of Fort Wayne, Indiana, about 20 miles south of Fort Wayne. That's where I'm originally from. So I grew up out in the country. I grew up in an area. My parents, they had like 5 acres that I grew up on.
So a lot of grass to mow.
So there was a lot of grass to mow. So I didn't want to have to do it. But that's where I started. That's where I'm from originally. Grew up there my entire life. Went into the military right out of high school. Went into the military. I served 12 years in the National Guard. And then while doing that, I pursued my education, and it wasn't in turf. I actually initially went to school. I saw myself as a catalog layout designer, so I went into the graphic design world. That's how I started. I went to school to be a graphic designer, catalog layout design. I did a little bit of that for a little bit once I graduated. Ended up going back to school again and got another bachelor's degree in marketing with an emphasis in sports marketing. And while I was working on that second degree in sports marketing, my now wife, her family owned a golf course in a town close to me, Decatur, Indiana. They own Grey Goose Golf Course. And during the summer months, while I was not in school, I was working for my wife's uncle.
And grass.
Yeah, I was cutting grass at that time.
So now you're back to it.
Yeah, now
just because of a girl.
We come full circle now because of but yeah, I was working at the golf course. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed working on the golf course. Was doing that, and I had graduated. My wife was graduating with her undergrad, and she went to school in Louisville. She went to school at Bellarmine University,
Okay.
and so I knew once she graduated, she had a job already lined up in the education field. She was a teacher. She already had a job lined up, so I knew we were going to be moving. So we moved. I moved. We both moved to Louisville, Kentucky. And I didn't have a job lined up. I had nothing lined up. And I was like, well, I kind of really like this golf thing. So I just started making cold calls. I called, I don't know how many golf courses, country clubs in the Louisville area. And I called one. It was Hurstbourne Country Club
Who was
in
there at the
Louisville,
time?
Kentucky. Walter Pritchett.
It was
And
Walter. We've had Walter on the
Walter,
podcast here. Walter's
Walter's
a great
still
man.
there. Walter's still there to this
Yep.
day. I called Walter up and I talked to him and told him a little bit about my background. And it was, let's see, we got married in July, so it was mid year. He was still looking for people to.
Of course, he was. Every golf
Yes,
course.
absolutely.
What
So
year was this?
That was back in 2006.
Okay.
I got married in 2006
Yeah.
and moved to Louisville in 2006. So I went down and I started off working for Walter at Hurstbourne Country Club. Was doing that and continued. I was loving it. At the time, Josh Adams was the first assistant. He was the first assistant at Hurstbourne, and he's a graduate of Rutgers University.
Yep.
Their two-year program. And he pulled me aside. He said, "Man, you kind of got a knack for this. It seems like you really like it. Have you ever thought about taking and getting the formal education?" And I said, "I hadn't, but I'm open to the idea of it." And I was at that point, I was already the window to get into their program was closing or closed at the time. And Josh made a call to, I think, Ned Littman, the director at the time up there. He made a call up to him and said, "Hey, I got a guy that's really interested in this. I think we're past our deadline, but can he get in?" And lo and behold, they accepted me. Hurstbourne ended up I went out to New Jersey and they kept me on payroll.
Wow,
they paid half my salary while I was out there. And basically when I went out there, they sent me out there as a third assistant. So I was managing their executive course, their 9-hole practice facility. So I went out there and started my turf degree, the 2-year degree.
What year did you go to Rutgers?
Would have been, I graduated 07 and 08.
Yeah. So you just missed me.
I did. I think that was just slightly before your
Literally
time.
by a year or two. Yeah.
I was gonna
That's
say.
too bad.
Yeah. So I was out there for 07 and 08, and I came back and was continuing to work at Hurstbourne, and doing that. And I had some other people that I had met in the industry. They were actually in the sports turf side of things. And they were like, "Hey, you might want to think about maybe, looking at sports turf as well." So I started making some cold calls, and I talked to the now retired Tom Nielsen with the Louisville Bats. I called him, the AAA affiliate for the Reds.
Yeah.
And he welcomed me with open arms. So I was actually working Hurstbourne during the day, going in early in the morning and working a full day at Hurstbourne. And then I would leave the golf course and I was working for the Louisville Bats throughout the season. So,
wow.
I was burning the candle at both ends, but I was such a sponge at that time. I just wanted to take it all in. And I fell in love. I fell in love with professional baseball, and just managing that field. I fell in love with it pretty quickly. I had that conversation with Walter, and it was awesome for him. He said, "Hey, if this is a good fit for you, then by all means, go there."
I can see Walter saying that.
Yeah, so Walter backed me 100%, and I ended up taking a job with the Louisville Bats, and I was there for 4 seasons. I was there for 2 years as the first assistant, and I was there for basically 2 years as just a game day seasonal kind of position. And then from that time, the 4 years that I spent in Louisville, really started to dabble into. I really wanted to learn more about the warm season grasses. Really didn't have a lot of expertise in that or any knowledge in that, and really wanted to get into college athletics. One thing kind of led to another with people that I was able to meet within the turf industry, and that came down to 2 places I was going to go. I was either going to go to Oregon State University or Louisiana State University. I was interviewing for both of them
as grounds manager.
as the first as the assistant sports
Okay.
turf manager
Yeah.
for
Good.
both of
Yeah.
those locations. Didn't quite work out with Oregon State University, but they did work out with LSU. So
That would have been
my
culture
wife,
shock if he had gone out
yeah,
west.
yeah. So my wife and I packed our bags and we moved to Louisiana in 2011. Moved down to Louisiana and got a crash course on all things SEC, all things
Wow. Yeah.
Bermuda
Big
grass.
time stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I dove. There was no wading into it. It was diving right into the
Both
deep end.
both feet. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. It was sink or swim moment right
Yeah.
there.
Exactly.
So I got to manage their soccer facility. I was basically in charge of the soccer facility and the softball complex.
Yeah.
So did both of those, and it's all hands on deck when it comes to football season. Didn't have any formal training on painting logos or painting football fields. So again, it was a sink or swim moment
Wow.
diving into
How
that
scary was that
situation.
at first?
Oh, it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild. It was a daunting task. I initially felt like I was in way over my head.
I bet.
Because I was responsible for painting both end zones
Oh
at
boy.
Tiger Stadium. So,
You got to spell
um,
things right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I definitely wanted to make sure I was up to par
Right.
on my spelling.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, so I was responsible for painting both the end zones. And we always had student volunteers and student help to do that. But trying to dive into that and learn all the finer techniques of painting something like that large scale. There is an art form to it.
Oh
And
yes.
it was trial by fire, and I definitely had to learn on the fly. And it worked out. It worked out, and I was able to do a lot of great things when I was down at LSU. Learned a lot of great things about moving forward, how I wanted my management style to be, how to work with people of all cultural backgrounds. Working at a big university like that, you get a lot of people that come in. So I was able to work just on my management style moving forward. Gain so much knowledge on Bermuda grass.
Good.
Celebration Bermuda
Yeah.
grass is what we
Yeah.
use predominantly down there, and that is a different beast. It is amazing. Never had to really worry about spraying any of our ryegrass out because that celebration would just do its natural thing
Yeah,
and eat
but
it up.
take care of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so doing that, managing softball, managing soccer, everything that it had to come with all the athletics. I mean, I was painting cross country courses and down there for helping out with baseball. It was a good year that the time that I was down there was great. The LSU, the football team, played in the national championship that
Yeah,
year.
really.
Softball went to the College World Series that first year I was down there. Baseball went to Super Regional, so it was a lot to take on
You were a
that first
star.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
I
was it
bet.
was it was it was pretty awesome. And then from there, I basically got a phone call from the University of Kentucky saying that they had a position that was open. They had assistant. Their assistant was leaving, and the head guy at the time, Marcus Dean, knew that I was from this area, from Northern Indiana.
Yeah.
Wanted to gauge my interest if I was looking at getting closer to home. And it just worked out. It just kind of worked out. And I ended up flying up to Lexington, interviewing, walking all the athletic facilities. One thing led to another, and my wife and I were moving back up to the Bluegrass State, moved
There you
back
go.
up here to Lexington. Spent some good years at UK as well. Again, it was virtually the exact same role. I was just dealing with more cool season than I was the
Yeah,
warm
yeah.
season grasses, managing softball, managing soccer, doing whatever I could to help out with football and in baseball. And then had the inkling. I didn't know if I wanted to get back into professional baseball. Kind of had that desire kind of burning within me. So I wanted to test the waters to see a couple of different reasons. I wanted to see if I still had the desire to get back into
Yeah.
professional baseball, but I also too wanted to take that leap of faith. I'd been an assistant now
Yeah.
for so many years, whether it was at the golf course, whether it was in minor league baseball, and then being at LSU and UK, I was the assistant. So I always had that safety net. I always had that safety net of the head guy that things were going to fall on him if things went really really bad. So I did. I left University of Kentucky, went back into professional baseball. Was working for the Lexington Legends here in town, single A affiliate for the Royals, and didn't have that safety net. Everything fell on me. So hiring the staff and working 100% with the budget and doing all that,
Must have learned a lot.
yeah, I learned a lot. Learned a lot. Again, it was a great opportunity for me to work on my management style. And the hours that were involved with all of that, working baseball, it was everything that I thought it was going to be, but things were a little different at that time. I had young kids. I had very young children at the time. And that was priority number one. I was basically living at the ballpark. If my wife wanted to bring our daughters to the field, that was really the only way I was going to see them. I didn't want that for myself. I didn't want that for my kids. So I applied and moved on to Berea College.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah. So after I left professional baseball, I went to Berea College. Berea is about 40 miles south of Lexington.
Okay.
So it's here in Kentucky. And that was the first time I ever managed a university or college setting. So I spent 6 wonderful years at Berea, learning a lot about budgetary items, managerial, administrative.
Right.
And then when I was there, that's when I was focused on landscape. I was focused on trees. I was focused on everything. So it wasn't just the grass. But it was there at Berea for 6 years. And then now I'm at Transylvania University. I've been here for a year and a half, and loving it.
So the first question I would have is
that was a bit long-winded on my background.
No, it's all right. That's what we're here for. The first question I have is, what happened to the family's golf course that your wife's family had?
Yeah, so they actually eventually sold. They eventually sold.
So there was not a job opportunity for you there.
No, there wasn't. No, it was there. My wife's uncle hated to see me go, especially when I went and got some more formal training and everything, the educational side of it. But no, they ended up selling the golf course. They got out from underneath the golf course probably around the same time I moved down to Louisiana. So about 4 or 5 years later.
Oh, so you were at Hurstbourne, but when they were still running that course.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So I could see that. So you've got quite, you're one of the few guys that I have a chance to talk to that has kind of bounced from golf to sports turf and now managing a university setting. What's the advice? I mean, what's good, what's bad? Obviously the lifestyle is a little bit better where you are now.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some compromises, but what kind of advice would you give a young guy if they're thinking about bouncing between these couple other, type of industries?
Yeah. So my big thing is just be open. Be open to the opportunities. There are so many opportunities out there, whether it's in golf, whether it's in sports turf, managing university settings, sales. I mean, there are so many options in our industry. Don't pigeonhole yourself to just one thing. Don't limit yourself just to that one thing. If you've got a wanting desire to try to do other things in your professional career, the opportunities are there. You just got to be willing to make those choices. Right. And go with it. And it's not always easy. Never really is it easy going from one job to another, because you get comfortable in that one setting that you're in, and you're going to a place that's ran completely different.
Of course,
and you have, you got people that are creatures of habit and they don't like change, and you're coming in with new ideas and new thought processes. So there's definitely learning curves, and but there's also value to that as well.
Yeah.
But my biggest thing is just don't limit yourself to one thing. I mean, I'm an example of being able to say that I've done a lot of awesome things in our industry.
Do you miss golf or sports at all?
No. I mean,
no regrets?
There's no regrets. I think I miss being around athletics 100% of the time. I do actually miss that from time to time, but in the current situation that I'm in here at Transy and what I dealt with at Berea College, I mean, for the last 8 years, I've had the best of both worlds. Yeah, I've been able to manage the campus setting and help manage the athletic venues that we have. So I've been able to dabble in both and give my advice and help on both. So,
What are your hours like at the school? I mean, what's your typical day for you and your crew? I mean, are you 9 to 5 in it? I mean, what's a typical
7 to 3:30,
every
7 to 3:30,
5 days a week?
5 days a week.
Weekends? What are you doing on weekends? Just when there's an event?
I value my time, but I value my crew's time even more.
Yeah,
We do absolutely everything that we can do from Monday through Friday, from seven in the morning to, let's say, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We do our absolute best to get things done and have campus looking great. And then after that 4 o'clock hour hits, the guys are gone. There are times, obviously, things come up and I need to have some things. I maybe have someone check in on campus from time to time, but that's usually planned out ahead of time.
Right.
I'm not one to try to drop that stuff on my staff. But that's our typical hours of operation. Like I said, I value their time just as much as I do mine. And I want them to have a life outside of work. Because that is one thing that I do not miss from professional sports or working in Division I college athletics is you don't have a lot of that work-life balance. It's you're at the beck and call really for the athletes.
And you've got 3 kids under 12, so having a little bit of time at home and being able to raise your children is got to be I mean, that's a lot of folks that I've talked to over all these years has been, I got kids and this day and age, it's a lot different. My generation was probably a lot different than, the younger generations now. And being able to spend time with your kid is huge. I mean, it's really important. Well, I hate to tell you this, but we've just blown over an hour. So
no kidding.
I know. Like I told you it would go fast. I told you that. There's a lot more we could talk about, but I want to say thank you for joining me, and hopefully people listening can see that the diversity of what your career has been pretty fascinating, and and you've made some pretty good decisions as to to where you ended up, and hopefully this career of yours stays strong for a very long time. And you're able to see your children graduate, and will they all go to Transylvania?
If they choose to, they can go here. That is one perk of the job, if they go here tuition free. So
that's kind of nice. I guess that'll be fun. Eric, I want to thank you very much for your time, and like I promised you, this would go fast and furious. But your insight has been wonderful, and again, I think anybody listening, seeing that you've bounced around, I mean, there are alternatives to, to what a lot of folks look at day to day. So I want to say thank you. And I want to thank everybody for joining us for the Earthworks podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to our podcast so that you can be notified of our guests coming up, like Mr. Eric Harshman from Transylvania University. Eric, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Thank you.